Hi, this is Dr. MJ coming to you from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. This is the Women in Dentistry podcast, where we feature women in dentistry making waves and leading the industry through the next decade. I am your host, Dr. Mary Jane Hanlon, a former dental assistant, dental hygienist, and now dentist. I'm very pleased to introduce you today to Dr. Kimberly Harms. Kim has been around the block in life. She has served as a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service, a dental school professor, a Greek counselor, a death doula, a civil mediator, a clinical dentist with her late husband Jim in Farmington, Minnesota, a school board chair, president of an international women's organization, the first woman president of the Minnesota Dental Association, a national spokesperson for 21 years for the American Dental Association, an award-winning best-selling author and international speaker on the topics of grief, conflict, and legacy planning. She has also suffered many personal losses, including the deaths by suicide of her mother and a son, and the death by broken heart of her husband after their son's death. Her most important role now is as a mother of her 2 surviving children and grandmother to 6 precious grandchildren. It is now my pleasure to bring you to my interview with Dr. Kimberly Harms.
Kim, I am so excited to have you on the show today. We've known each other for, 3 or 4 years. We haven't seen each other because I haven't been to many meetings, but I'm really excited to reconnect and find out what you're doing in your life. So, like I ask all of my guests, would you please give us a little background on how you got into dentistry and a little bit about your story?
Well, I graduated high school in 1974, so it was before the days when women were looking at dentistry as a career. In fact, the percentages in the most dental schools were in maybe 3-4% of the dental school class were women. So it was an unusual profession to think about at that time. My reason for choosing dentistry was really not a good one that your viewers should emulate, because there was this really cute guy, and his name was Jim Harms. And he wanted to go to dental school. And I thought, because I was a woman of the 70s, that, if I had a good job, like, at becoming a dentist, and I was a zoology major, so everything fit. If I had a good job, maybe he'd marry me. And it worked, and he did. So I went to school with my husband, Jim. But as it turned out, it was a fabulous profession for me. I absolutely loved it. I loved going even as a couple, because Jim and I, throughout our life and our long history, practiced together. When I was having babies and the children were young, he worked full-time, I worked part-time. He then had a number of medical issues later on in life. I worked full-time, he worked part-time. We were able to adjust our lives, adjust our schedules, and I thought dentistry was an amazing profession, and I just absolutely loved it. But I didn't have a good reason for starting. I just wasn't knowledgeable, but it really worked out.
You know what? I think that's fabulous. And so how many years did you guys practice together?
We practiced for over 30 years. And in 2010, I developed a radiculopathy and nerve damage to my drilling fingers, of all places. It was damage to nerves in my neck, which could have affected any part of the body, depending on which nerve it was. But of course, the nerves that affected me were the ones that went to my drilling fingers. And so I had a permanent nerve damage in my hand, and I had to stop overnight. I was working full time. My husband had been sick. He was working part time. I was a primary breadwinner, was working full time. And within a couple of minutes, I was told by the doctors at the Mayo Clinic that I was done with dentistry. And so that was very devastating. It also made me realize what a great profession it is, and how much I missed the clinical portion of dentistry, and that the ability to not only, I thought it was a fun profession, it's a people profession, but also you can support your family easily with the dental profession. So it was a kind of a stressful time when that happened. But I had over 30 years of clinical practice, and I loved it. And I've been staying active. I've been teaching all over the country. I've been a spokesperson for the American Dental Association for 21 years. And I was teaching all over the country and even internationally on managing stress and grief and crisis in a dental office.
So you've had a number of different, you brought up the American Dental Association, and you've had a bunch of different positions there. So tell us a little bit more about that. why you got involved in organized dentistry and how it's impacted your life.
Well, my involvement in organized dentistry was a wonderful experience, and it really helped me to grow. I actually was a person that grew up, I was very shy. I'm missing some fingers on my right hand, so I was conscious of that. I was a very shy person, but I'm also passionate about things when they occur. And I got started really in organized dentistry in the year 1992 or 93, I think, when some healthcare laws passed in Minnesota that would have been damaging to the dental profession. And so I have a public health background as well. I was in the National Service Corps. I was a commissioned officer in the Public Health Service. And so I was now in private practice. So I had the background in both public health and private practice. And they're two different animals, really. And so, but then the language is different in these two groups. So I was able to help the Dental Association by communicating with legislators from a public health aspect as it related to a private practice. And that was very helpful. So I was elected president of the Minnesota Dental Association, due basically to those efforts. And then as I was testifying on one of these issues, a representative from the American Dental Association came and recommended me to the American Dental Association due to that testimony. And then I became a national spokesperson for them. And we spoke on crises such as the AIDS crisis, when microfilm in our water lines became, it was exposed, which we didn't really even know about at the time. I was speaking for the American Dental Association on those issues. There are always, controversies that arise, and I was able to learn how to do that and how to manage a crisis, which was fabulous. So again, my own personal growth, that has been very helpful. And then was active in my community. I was chair of a school board. I was on a school board for 14 years. I was on a number of other committees. I just like to be active. And the nice thing about dentistry, and especially owning your own practice or having your own a partnership with someone where you have some control over your schedule, is I could adjust my schedule to make sure I made all my kids, baseball games and basketball games and whatever they were doing. Plus I could adapt to, going to testify in the middle of the day if I had to. So I was very fortunate because my husband and I owned our own practice. We could decide how we utilized our hours, which was really nice. Having that flexibility and freedom was great.
Now, let me ask you a specific question. Somebody listening to your story is going to say, oh my gosh, she got to do so many things in leadership. Where did you get your leadership training from and develop those skills? Was there a specific course you took, or is it just innate for you?
That's a really good question. I think for me, I'm passionate about certain subjects, and as life progresses, we go through different seasons. I'm 67 now, so as life progresses, I'm a grandma. I'm, should be retired, but I kind of failed retirement. So I'm kind of doing things that are just fun for me. But you go through this progression and you become passionate about things as you go through those. When my children were little, I was passionate about education. So I went on the school board. When I saw things going on in dentistry legislatively that needed some help, I became passionate about that. So I didn't really actually get training in leadership. However, I do know that there are training. I know the state of Minnesota has its own leadership training now in dentistry, which is fabulous. But I just basically got it with my boots on the ground, just struggling through these things. And again, I was very shy. I was not someone that would stand out. But when I get passionate about something, I'll carry the torch, and talk about it. So that's kind of where it came. I just became passionate about certain issues and worked really hard to get those to help in that area.
Wow, that's great. I know that you've overcome an obstacle in your life, and it has become a big part of this season of your life. Like, we all have different seasons where we, go to school, then we practice, and then we do other things. And so this season in your life, you're very focused on that conflict and grief resolution. So tell the audience a little bit more about what you're doing and what happened.
Well, we had three children, my two older daughters, Hillary and Ashley, and my younger son, Eric. And Eric was this amazingly talented golden boy. He was recruited by Columbia University. They wanted him. He was recruited by them. And he did go to Columbia. Columbia was his dream school because he was a jazz pianist. And he was also, a National Merit Scholar and was studying engineering at Columbia. He was elected to student government at Columbia. Like, who gets elected to student government at Columbia? He was doing plays with the women from Barnard. He was just living the best life ever his first semester at Columbia, and he had a girlfriend that he was in love with, and he was on top of the world when he came back. Got on the dean's list in engineering the first, he found that out when he was home with us, and he was just on top of the world. And 2 weeks later, his girlfriend broke up with him. And even though he was really brilliant and had all these wonderful talents and loved people, he was 19 years old, and he had a 19-year-old brain. And he was also a jazz pianist, which means he was very impulsive. That's what makes you such a good jazz pianist. He was playing in the jazz program at Columbia. And so he took his life 45 minutes. 45 minutes after his girlfriend broke up with him, he took his own life. And it was a complete out of the blue shock to us. We had been with him just a couple of weeks earlier. He was on top of the world. Everything was great, but he didn't know how to manage this. And I think part of it is he never failed at anything. I mean, he just didn't. He just was always the kid that, never failed. And it was a complete shock and devastation to us. We were just, both of us devastated. And of course we had our own practice. Fortunately, we had sold half of it by then. So we had partners, which was nice. And I think that's also a nice thing that my daughter, who now is a dental attorney and does a lot of transition, sees that as a growing trend of partnerships. So there are other people there. We had to manage, how do we manage this in a dental clinic, right? In a small town, and everybody knew Eric. So everybody knew Eric. He was really very highly thought of. And so for the next 6 months, you see people every day for 6 months. And I had my patients, and I had 2 hygienists I was checking. So there might have been 30 patients I would come in contact with every day. Almost all of them would, reference Eric, which they should. You want to say, I'm so sorry that, that we lost Eric. So for the next 6 months, every day we were trying to manage that with so many, people that it was like a trigger for us. We had to learn how to manage grief in a dental office, which is hard. We luckily had a terrific team. In fact, one of our dental hygienists had lost her son to suicide after a breakup with a girlfriend when he was in high school. So a very similar situation. But we got a lot of support. We kind of developed a team that when somebody was in crisis, we had about 12 of us. When somebody was in crisis, we would at the huddle in the morning, we'd say, "Now, is there anything we need to do to help?" And we kind of had a signal if somebody was needed a little minute or two. And when you have a catastrophic loss, you're probably going to need that every once in a while when you get like hit with bam, And we had a crying room upstairs. Our staff lounge was upstairs, and we would. In the bathroom up there, we had Visine, for the eyes. We had tissues. We had, a little makeup to kind of remove the mascara that was dripping down your face. We had all kinds of things just kind of set up. And we had a team that worked together to manage these crises. And it was fabulous. And it was just really a team. It was a team effort. And, when no matter what you do, no matter what profession you choose, you're going to go through a crisis every so often.
Yeah.
And the more people you have, the more crises you're going to have. We've had, you have people that get cancer and they have to adjust their schedule, or people have a catastrophic loss, like a loss of child. Even now, losing their pet, that can throw people off for a while. So we developed a system to help the people in the team kind of signal each other when they needed help and come and help out. Like if I needed to just run upstairs for a minute to compose myself, my dental assistant knew what to do to kind of come in and keep the patient occupied. The dental hygienist would fill in for each other if they were having an issue. And we kind of developed that team. And it was a fabulous kind of a family that was formed there. And it's something that I talk about and recommend to groups to take a look and be prepared for a crisis, because life is, I'm 67, so life is full of crises, and they're going to happen. And we need to be able to be prepared for that. And we need to be able to learn how to crawl out of that pit. And you got to crawl, could fight and kick and scream, get out of that pit so that you can live life in the moment and live life every day for what's in front of you now. Look at what's in front of you now rather than what was lost. And so it took a while to develop that. But
now, have you written a book about that particular subject? And if so, tell the audience the name of the book and how they can find it.
I've written several books. I also lost my husband 4 years ago. So that was another So there goes another loss. And I've become really attached to widows. I had a dear, dear friend. Her name was Naomi Rohde, who developed a women's ministry. So through my church, I did do a kind of a Christian ministry with widows. But I also realized after my husband died, after my son died, that we are not emotionally prepared in this country to manage death and to manage the repercussions and to manage how do we survive emotionally. We talk a lot about financial planning and getting your affairs in order, and that's very important. But we also need to take a look at what do we need to do to prepare our families for a time when we're not with them. And I have 6 grandchildren. And when my husband died, I saw the effect on them. They were devastated. And I started looking around thinking, oh, I'm next. And I want to be next. I don't want anyone going before me. I'm next in line for this. And I want to make sure that we know how to cope with these issues. And part of the book writes about the loss of my son, the loss of my husband, the loss of my practice. How do you cope with these kind of devastating losses and get yourself out of that pit, learn how to have joy in life again, and then to basically leave a legacy to your kids and your grandkids that's positive. And the purpose of the book is called Are You Ready? How to Build a Legacy to Die For. And it's won a couple of awards. It's got really good reviews. The purpose of the book is to help you prepare your family for success after you die. Because all of us know of families that were torn apart because someone didn't have a will. They just died and just didn't think about what was going to happen. And I really want to help people realize that you're not doing anyone any favors doing that. That getting a lawyer to draw up your will is far less expensive than having your family members fighting over your will. They're gonna, because the lawyers will take all the money then, you might as well just forget it. And also how to prepare people to emotionally handle death and dying, and to realize that death is part of life and that life goes on. And I know I've been successful with my techniques because I have a little 7-year-old little redheaded granddaughter, and she was at the dinner table the other day, and she said, Nana, and I said, yeah, Heidi. She goes, well, Nana, what happened to Pop-Up happens to you? And I said, do you mean if I died? And she said, yeah, Nan, if you died. Well, I said, go ahead, Heidi, if I died. Well, could we still go to Disney World? Yes, you can. You go to Disney World and you enjoy your life and you be happy. And every time you're enjoying your life and you're being happy, you're honoring me and you're honoring my life when that happens. So just understand that this is part of life and you need to go on. You need not to have any survivor's guilt, which is just devastating and false and unnecessary. Go on with your life and live your life fully. And I think that's a message I'd like to bring to people because I experienced with my losses that survivor's guilt and how difficult it was to manage your life and work through the grief and get to a point where you could live your life fully in the present, looking at what you had rather than what you lost.
Amazing outlook on life. Congratulations, Kim, because there's, I call it the fork in the road. You had the choice, right? That's where we have to make a choice. You had the choice to be devastated and go down that rabbit hole. But instead, you've made something positive come out of a really negative experience. So congratulations. I hope everyone takes the opportunity to pick up that book and read it and prepare for themselves. I'll just share personally, my family went through a really difficult time. My dad did have a will, but he never told me where anything was. And I was the executor of the estate. So I had to go hunting for everything. And it was really difficult because we had just moved them 6 months prior to that. And I didn't know where anything was. So it was really tough.
Last third of the book. The first third is legacy. The second third talks about death and dying. The last third is a workbook. It has everything you need to know, everything you need to have. And we recommend, and I'm doing a seminar this Saturday to help. I have everything in a 3-ring binder, including envelopes or page protectors with my titles of my car, my birth certificate, my marriage certificate, all the things that they need to have is in a 3-ring binder. It's in my safe. My girls have the combination. They know exactly where it is. So that when I die, part of preparing them is when I die, they just pick up the workbook and everything they need to manage my death is in that little 3-ring binder. They don't have to look anywhere, rummage through my cupboards. And that's really what it's my new mission. That's my new passion right now is to get people to get their binder so that people you don't have to go and search for all those things. not only is it hard and devastating during that time right after, but by not doing that, there are so many families because things aren't clear where they won't even talk to each other because they don't like maybe you put your dad in hospice and they thought, well, you're killing him. He could be in the hospital. Well, those things need to be worked on, taken care of before it happens so that everybody's clear on what your wishes are and it's in writing so that, because people's memories, not because they're doing it intentionally, but people's memories are different. And if it's in writing, you can document it, and it's just a much easier way for the next generation to successfully move on.
Yeah, transition. So outstanding. I think having a notebook is a great idea. I'm going to pick up your book and I'm going to do the same thing. I think anyone that hits 60 needs to start thinking about that. Because I know when I did go through a move recently, the house we brought my daughter up in, I started to think about all those things. Okay, what do you want me to keep? What do you want me to throw away? Is there anything that, Mom, I don't want anything. And this generation, our children, they don't want anything. They want you to give it all away. I know they don't want your crap, as my daughter would call it. But that's okay because you have to, value what they like and what they don't like. So there were a lot of things that I got rid of, a lot of things that I sent to Goodwill, but the organization of where everything is, it has not been done yet. And that's a great advice for our audience is if you're over 60, it's time to start thinking about that because you still have your mind, you still have your opportunity to get everything organized for your family, and don't make it miserable because I know I went through a miserable experience. Hopefully you did not, but I went through a miserable experience.
Yes, it is. And there's a whole chapter on shedding, which is getting rid of your stuff. I sold a cabin and got rid of my stuff. It's extremely painful, I must say, but it is an act of love it's really an act of love for your children. You're going through this pain now because you want them to be able to grieve without all those added diversions that are going to send them further in the grief pit, those added distractions that make it harder. So, but it is hard. It's hard. I'm a China painter. So I love China, and the millennials are not that crazy about China. So,
no.
It's devastating, but you know what? I'm so glad that my girls are independent and think for themselves and have their own stuff. So I just have to change my way of thinking. Again, it's painful, but it really is freeing when you do that.
Absolutely. All right. Tell us one thing the audience would like to know about you, but would be surprised.
Well, I would be surprised that I have two daughters. When I was young, my husband and I were growing up, and we have two remaining daughters. And one of the things when Eric died, I had to realize that I had to be there for them. I had to be there for the living. And we tried to convince them to go into dentistry, but we were completely unsuccessful. All three of my kids wanted to be lawyers. I don't know why. I'm a dentist. They wanted to be lawyers. And so my daughters became lawyers. And a few years back, one of my daughters handled the transition when my husband and I were selling the practice. And she said, Mom, I really like this because she was doing family law. She goes, this is just like family law, except there's no kids. So I love this. And she knew about dentistry because she worked in our practice for a number of years. So my daughter, Hillary, started 5 years ago, I guess now, her own dental law firm as a woman. And she now manages, and I'll tell you, there were no women attorneys practicing. And at the time here, there are plenty now, but she handles almost more than half actually of the transitions in the state of Minnesota now. And she loves it. And then she brought my other daughter in, and then she asked me to help. So when I was a kid, my kids were kids, and my husband and I were trying to get them into dentistry so we could transfer this legacy of a dental practice to them. It was our dream, and they didn't want to do it, and we just felt sad. They now are in dentistry. So I'm living the dream, and they're both in it. They both are working in it, and they need to call me to ask for advice. So that's the other part. Because when you get to be in your 67, people aren't calling you asking you for advice a lot. But now my daughters are calling me, asking me for advice. So it's a fabulous thing. So although I tried to get my two daughters into dentistry, was completely unsuccessful. They have come around in a whole new profession, in a whole different way. And I'm living the dream working with my daughters. So it's fabulous.
That is outstanding. What a great transition and way to close the loop, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Yeah, because no matter what happens to you in life, no matter what happens to you in your life, it's a battle. You have to fight it. It's not easy, but you can get to the point where you can have joy again. And it's a matter of looking at what you have right in
And being
front of you
grateful for it.
and being
Yeah,
grateful for it and not focusing on what you've lost.
that's right.
It's that whole gratitude uh, idea is just critical for throughout your life. And I hope that your viewers will learn that before I did, because I was kind of old by the time I got to that point. So it can save you so much stress and anxiety and depression if you can start to do that at an early age.
Great advice. What's a single piece of best advice that you were given, either when you were younger or recently, and who provided it for you?
I think the best advice was from my mom. I lost my mom when I was 17. I lost her first when I was 6. She
Oh,
was bipolar. Um, she had a lot of issues, a lot of problems, was in an institution for many years. And most people wouldn't think, that, oh, she must not have been a good mother. That's the assumption. She was the most amazing, loving, fantastic mother. And she gave me my faith, which is very important to me. But even though I was born with just 7 fingers, and probably expected to not be able to participate in life as much as other people, she told me I could do anything. And I think that's how I was able to kind of get through dental school and even go to dental school, because when you're applying and you only have 7 fingers, you kind of wonder if they're even going to take you or if you could do the job. But I did learn that one hand does dentistry, the other holds a mirror. So as long as you can hold the mirror, you can do dentistry. So I did learn that. But I think that was the best piece of advice. She taught me from a very early age. And if you look at attachment theory now, you realize that so many of the things that stay with you throughout your life are ingrained in you when you're young. And even though I only had her for 6 years, she ingrained in me that I could do whatever I wanted. And then she gave me my faith that it also was important to me.
Oh, that's outstanding. I will tell you, my mom gave me the best piece of advice also. Because when I was 14, I came home one day and I said, Mom, I'm going to be a dentist. And she looked at me like, what are you, nuts? Nobody in our family was in dentistry or medicine. And so she was just shocked by the announcement. And she gave me the best piece of advice. She said, well, if you're going to do that, you better make sure you like it, because there's a lot of schooling and a lot of time that has to go into it. And you've got to be smart. So you're going to have to buckle down and study hard. Then she said, but I think you should get a job after school to make sure you like it. And I did. I went out right then and there at 14 years old and found a job working for an orthodontist. So, if you're young and you know what you want to do, I think it's key to get out there and experience it first. First day I walked into that orthodontic practice, I was in.
Yeah.
I knew at that moment in time, it took me a long time to get there because I didn't graduate dental school until I was 40, but I knew I was going to be a dentist at 14. So that was it. So that's awesome.
I think people don't realize I love dentistry. And so I really realized how much I loved it when I couldn't do it anymore, right? But
Right.
when I lost that ability.
Taken
But
away.
it's
Yeah,
people person job every day is completely different. You're never
sure is.
bored.
Mm-mm.
And it's just a fabulous profession. I'm so glad that over 50% of the classes now are women. I'm so glad women have discovered this over the since I was there, women discovered, hey, this is really a good profession for women. I'm so glad they discovered it because it is a fabulous profession. I'm so grateful that I fell for this guy that was going into dental school, because I didn't know whatever. In the 70s, it wasn't really something that you considered. You
No,
were way
no. I was told by my guidance counselor I wasn't smart enough. I was told by my guidance counselor, no, dear, you want to be the hygienist. I said, no, I know the difference between the hygienist and the dentist, and I want to be the dentist. And he just told me I wasn't smart enough. And I could have listened to him too, right? I mean, that's part of my story, is that was the fork in the road. And I could have listened to him, and I could have just gone down that rabbit hole and said I wasn't good enough or not participating in the profession because I didn't have any confidence. But I didn't. I just decided right then and there, nobody's going to tell me what to do. I'll prove you wrong. And I thank the guy every day for saying that, because quite honestly, it is what has fueled me my entire career. So who in dentistry inspires you to do what you're doing? Is there anybody in the profession that inspires you?
There was a woman, it actually was a classmate of mine. Her name is Joyce Huey. She's a professor now at Maryland. I think she's still there. And she was older. I was like the youngest, one of the youngest in the class, and she was one of the oldest in her class. And I thought she was one of the youngest because she just looks like she had braces when she started. I think she was 36. And she was married and she was a school teacher. And I just watched her go, and she got divorced like right after dental school, shortly after dental school. So she was going through some traumatic times during that period, but she stuck it out. I mean, I got to see her and watch her go through those tough times. She stuck it out. She's in Baltimore and ended up now teaching at the University of Maryland. I've gone there to speak a few times, and she's always there. And she was a beautiful person inside and out. And she just had this grace about going through life and not letting those other things get to her, just kind of staying focused on her goal and doing it with grace and dignity. And I just admire her so much. So anybody from Maryland, Dr. Joyce Huey is one of my role models.
That's awesome. Who, person, place, or thing has made the biggest impact? Do you think she was the same person, covered both?
Yeah, she did. She did. Of course, my husband, I was married to Jim for 44 years, and he always supported me. I mean, especially when I started getting involved in organized dentistry, which involved nighttime meetings occasionally here and there, and he always supported me. And I was the first woman, not only first woman president of the Minnesota Dental Association, but of the whole Upper Midwest. So we had this district of 5 states that we worked together, and I was the first woman there. And so they didn't quite know what to do with me, and normally it was more of a social thing in those days than it is now. And they usually it was a dentist who was an older male, typically with a wife that would come. And here I was a younger female with kids and a husband. And so they were home usually when I would have to travel. And I was able to kind of cut the travel down. So I had a little talk before I accepted that president's job, saying I'm not going to get to every single board meeting, and I have kids that play basketball, and so I have to adjust my schedule. And they adjusted it for me, which was fabulous. But Jim gave me, because I had a supportive spouse.
There you go.
He took care of things when I was gone, and he supported me in doing all these things. And I think he made such a huge impact on my ability to do that. Because when you have 3 children, travel is a difficult thing to do unless you have a supportive person at home that can take care of things at home. So I really have to give that to my husband. He was very supportive.
That's awesome. Have you ever had an aha moment in your life where you realized, oh my gosh, I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do?
Interesting that you should say that, because it happened yesterday. I'm working with the legacy program, and like I said, the last part of the book is a workbook, and I've just really understood how many of us, of a certain age, senior citizens, perennials, I like to call us.
Perennials. Oh, I like that.
Perennials, because we're still here. We're tough. We keep coming back. You might not want us to come back, but we're coming back. We keep coming back. But how hard it was for them, and I spend a lot of time in my church, and so there's a larger group of older people. I'm in the group of the 60 and 70-year-olds. There's another group of 80 and 90-year-olds. Because they're sticking around. They're still here, mostly women, as the men tend to kick the bucket a little faster. And they needed this information about getting a healthcare directive signed and where to put things and what you needed to do. And so they've been asking me to kind of give a little seminar there. And so a few months ago, I rewrote the workbook to have more of a fill in the blank, thing, so that we could put it in that 3-ring binder. So I took my workbook, made it bigger so I could put it in the 3-ring binder. I'll send you a copy. And I'm giving a seminar this Saturday on that. And I was in yesterday making sure everything was going to work, and the audio visual was good and everything. And I had so many people come up to me and just say, "Oh, Kim, I'm so grateful you're doing this. I need this. I feel paralyzed. I don't know what to do. I don't want to I'm going to face my death. But then I know that if I don't, my kids are not going to get along. They're going to fight over these issues. And I need to just have those discussions. I need to have the courage to do that. I need to show my love for that." And I just kind of felt like, bingo, I'm right where I need to be right now. And again, it's a phase of life. I'm in my retirement phase, which should be my retirement, but of course I have failed that. But I don't think I'll ever retire. I think I'll be doing something to feel useful and there's a lot of just personal satisfaction. And also I would probably be stalking all my grandchildren otherwise. So my kids are happy I'm busy with something, right? Because I'd be hanging out their house, looking at their, going to their schools and peeking in the windows to see what they were doing. So it's been a really good thing for me. And I think that's a thing that I realized that went before you retire. And of course I retired early because I couldn't, it was a forced retirement. I was in my 50s. But before you think about a time when you are retiring, think about what you want to do. Find something else. Keep busy with something. And if you take a look at longevity studies, you find that people that have a purpose and have something to do as they get older, especially when you become widowed, because all of a sudden you're alone, or divorced or whatever, suddenly your life is changing dramatically. Have something else to do. Find something else to do that helps you feel that you're being useful and that you have a purpose. And I think that's I've been able to do that, which is fabulous. I'm still doing a few. I've kind of taken my name off the Speakers Bureau list. I'm doing a few in dentistry, but I'm also focused now on just helping people build their legacy and get ready.
That's so exciting. And I am so thankful that we're having this discussion, because I know that there's going to be a ton of women out there who have not started to think about this. And I don't think it's too early, even in your 50s, to start putting stuff away in an organized fashion and having that conversation with your spouse if you're married. Because like you said, some men go early, and when it's catastrophic and like a death of your son, you just you don't know where to go and what to do. And I do appreciate the fact that this woman was paralyzed. I have felt that paralyzing emotion where you can't move on, and it's overwhelming. And you helping them is a great service for the community. So congratulations to you. It's just amazing what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I start off most of my seminars now with legacy is saying, well, how many people are in their fourth quarter? And people my age are going to rate, we're in our fourth quarter, just checking out the years, we're coming to the end. And then they know they're in the fourth quarter, but everyone else doesn't know. See, we know we're in the fourth quarter because, okay, just looking at our lifespan, but I just lost a niece at 52 from cancer. She didn't know. I've lost other family members early from cancer. They didn't know. My son didn't know. We didn't know. So I think it is something we all need to consider. And I would luckily with my niece, since she did have some time after a cancer diagnosis, she came and we spent a couple of weekends, had some pajama parties, and I helped her get through all of her stuff. So that was a real blessing. But we just don't know. We don't know when that time is going to come. So we need to be ready at all times.
That's amazing advice. Just amazing. All right. Now, you're dealing with death all the time. So a question I have for you is, okay, you've got to have some tough days. And how do you manage those tough days? Because we all know emotion changes our energy. And if you have really negative energy, more negative things come to you. So how do you keep your emotions high and stable and balanced?
Well, my faith has a big part of that. And when I wake up in the morning, okay, especially after becoming a widow, and I was married for 44 years. I got married when I was 19. I worked fast with that dental thing, getting Jim to marry me thing. It all worked out great. That plan was great. But when he died, we had a cabin, a retirement cabin on a beautiful lake on the Continental Divide in the Northwoods. And we had all these plans for our retirement, which just went up in smoke when he died, because
Sure.
I'm not going to go up there by myself, So I had to really change my whole view of the rest of my life when he died. And I also had to cope with the loneliness of waking up. There's, nobody knows where you go, nobody knows where you are, where you go. And I had some medical issues going on during that time. And I just come back from the hospital, and I was having allergic reactions to some of the medication. I thought, well, if I die, no one's going to know, it's just all these crazy thoughts that'll go through your head. You go down into that rabbit hole. And when I wake up in the morning, that's usually the worst time. You kind of wake up and it's like, oh, I'm by myself. You wake up, and I learned, again, I'm a person of faith. And so I would just kind of, think, okay, Satan, you're not going to get me today. You're not going to put me down that rabbit hole. So I kind of use, whether that's biblically correct or not, I don't know, but it helps me to have like an enemy. I don't know why that is. Not any person. I don't have any personal enemies, but I had like the evil forces or the bad forces or whatever put you down the rabbit hole. And I get up and I just think, I am not going to let you put me down in that hole again. I'm going to show you, I just use that kind of energy. It might sound a little crazy, but that's what I use to get out of bed. I kind of use frustration and anger, and that whole thing that you went through when your guidance counselor said, "Do you want to be a dental hygienist?" You said, "No, I want to be a dentist." That power that you get from being stubborn is what I use when I get up, and I fight it. I technically fight it. When I start going down the rabbit hole, I technically fight it. And I go out and I do things. I get out of the house. I meet with friends, grandchildren are like the best balm ever.
They
But
sure are.
they aren't they? They just, I mean,
The
oh my,
best.
you just can't even imagine. So I'll go see the grandchildren. And I have a daughter in Kansas City. I'll drive down there. But I actively fight it. I don't let it consume me, because it would. And
Sure.
I can't tell you how many days I wake up, and that's how I wake up. And it's a battle, but I battle it right away. I just take charge right away. And any of us, and to get through dental school, you need a certain amount of stubbornness, because you got to
Yeah.
really, a lot of work. I take that stubbornness and I focus it on positive mental energy, and to be loving and kind to people, because it's not just me and my loneliness in my little condo by myself. It's any person I come across. It's my grandchildren. If I'm sad or down, they will pick up on that. And
Absolutely.
so that's the importance of just being joyful, finding that joy for yourself, and then you can spread it out to the people around you.
Awesome. What about a guilty pleasure or a secret dream that you want to accomplish before your fourth quarter is over?
Okay, I have a secret dream that now is no longer a secret. So now that I've been doing this legacy thing, I've noticed that when you go on, I'm going on a cruise with Naomi Rhodey to Alaska coming up. I noticed that people on these cruises are very old, and they're probably in need of my book. So my
Yeah.
secret dream, yes, my secret dream is to get paid to go on cruises and give this course, go through the course, so that by the end of the cruise, they come out with their legacy book, all ready to go. That's my dream. That's my secret goal, which I just developed over the last year, because I just got the book out. The book came out in October. So that's a new dream, but that's kind of my secret dream. That's not a secret anymore, but I would love to do that. Would it be fun just kind of
Oh
cruising
my,
around with people?
go
You can
anywhere.
join
Yeah,
me.
I mean,
You could,
you could be doing European tours too.
I could go, anywhere, especially because you're on a cruise, you're stuck on that boat, and you can do
Absolutely.
something on the boat. So anyway, so if there's any cruise directors out there, I'm your girl. Your call.
I think it's a great idea. Awesome. All right. Now, we talked earlier about the importance of confidence. And one of the reasons why I started this podcast was because I keep seeing really brilliant women going into the profession, and they don't have the confidence. They don't have the confidence to go from a dental assisting position to a dental hygiene position, or a dental hygiene position to a dental position. Why don't they have the confidence, and what causes that? So in your life, how did you build your confidence, and where do you think your confidence came from? Especially since you did a lot of speaking, and obviously everybody knows that public speaking is the number one thing that everybody fears. So how did you develop your confidence, and where do you think it comes from? And any good advice for the audience?
The speaking came over time, because I was on a school board. So then, I had a little bit here and a little bit there. And then when I was president of the Dental Association, I had to do a lot of speaking. It was a very contentious legislative session. So I had to do a lot of, testifying and all that stuff. So I was kind of forced into that first part. And I think that the first time I felt comfortable speaking was my last speech as president. I was so nervous, all those other speeches, I would just get the jitters, and my voice would quiver a little bit, and I would be very nervous. And so I think it was practice. But one of the things I was really nervous about in dentistry, talk about, not feeling confident there, was like, okay, I married the guy, I got into dental school, I even got in early, so we were in the same class. But now I only have 7 fingers. So what are the patients going to think about that? This is, whoops, this is, what am I doing? I wasn't following your mother's advice, making sure, everything was good beforehand. And I realized that I was very sensitive about my hand, that people would see my hand. And so what I did was, I had played basketball in high school, and I became a referee in dental school for the Baltimore Board of Officials. And I refereed high school girls basketball games. And when you referee, you have to hold your hand up in front of everybody. you know. So I just got used to holding my hand up in front of everyone. And then as a referee, and then I did some volleyball refereeing where you have to like hold your hand up like this, when you're telling people to go. So I was holding my hand up in front of all these people, and people were looking at, go, what the heck is that? And I got used to that. And it was ingrained in me that people are just curious or not, thinking badly of me. And so I just went out and I faced my biggest fears and I just tried to overcome them. And so that's how I overcame that fear. But the public speaking, that did take some time. And I think as I'm older, one of the things about getting older is it's like, well, who cares? People think of me. I mean, like, what the heck? I'm old. I don't have a lot of time left. If they don't like me, okay, that's all right. So I think you're allowed to we can feel more comfortable being our genuine selves when we're older. Whereas when I was younger, I felt people would judge me. But I think being your authentic self right away, if I had learned that when I was 20, I would have had a much easier life.
Well, I think that we need to spend some time there because you did something that most people aren't willing to do. You faced your fear. Even though it was really troubling to you, you faced it head on. And I think that's great advice for the younger generation because if you want to accomplish something, you've got to just do it. You've got to just take the leap of faith and just walk out there. And I think that is a stellar example of facing your fear and just doing it anyway. I think there's a quote out there. Somebody said it, but face your fear and do it anyway. I think that there have been times in my life where I have felt the same way where, I know that chatter, I call it frickin' frap, that chatter in your brain that says, no, you can't do it. You're not good enough, blah, blah, blah. And then, the other side is you can do this. You just got to be brave enough to just step forward. And I just sometimes don't even think about it. The whole podcast was created because I didn't think about it. I didn't think about not knowing how to do a podcast. I didn't think about who was going to be on the show. I just made the first call, asked the first person, and everything went from there. So great advice. Great advice. Now, speaking of a quote, do you live by a motto, a mantra that you want to share with the audience?
Well, I'm a Christian, so when I identify myself, and as you get older, you go through a lot of identities, right? So you go, I was a daughter, and then my mother died. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was the mother of a son, and he died. I was a wife, he died. I was a practicing dentist, couldn't do that anymore. So in my life, I have been through many, many identities where I had to face the fact that I was no longer had that identity. And the one thing, when you have a faith, whatever it is, when you have a faith, I just feel loved and valued as, because I'm a Christian, I'm a child of God. That's what keeps me centered. That's what keeps me focused. And I think everyone, no matter what your belief system is, needs to find that focus where you feel valuable. You're good enough. I'm enough by myself. And I, as a widow, I had to realize, okay, I'm enough alone. I'm not planning on getting remarried. I'm good where I am. You have to kind of come to that where you are valued, you are good, you have a purpose. You're not better than anybody else, but you're not worse than anybody else. You have a value as a human being. And I think that's what I wish I had. It's something that developed over time. But I do remember a lot of anxiety that I suffered when I was younger because I didn't have that. And also, I'm not afraid to fail, which is something that I was afraid to fail at many times. But not to go out there and try something, even if you fall flat on your face. And even like going to dental school, if you don't get accepted the first year, try again the next year. I know many people that have taken a couple of times to try, but don't be afraid to fail, and don't allow a failure to affect your identity as to who you are, because you're a valuable human being just for existing. That's who you are. And you can go out and live your legacy, and you have a legacy to give to the world to make it a better place. Go out and live that legacy.
Oh, great advice. This has been unbelievable. Okay, last question. What piece of advice would you give to young women that are going into the profession or that are just starting out being an assistant, hygienist, dentist? What's your advice to them?
Oh my gosh. First of all, you are entering such a great field. We are such a helping field. And one of the things that we can do even compared to other branches of medicine, is that we typically go in there and we fix a problem. I mean, we can typically, most of the time, we can fix a problem. I mean, there's certain things that we fail at over time, but it's a small number compared to medicine. So we're able to do something to help people in a critical, area of health, and that your job is to focus on that patient, focus on the person, do whatever you can for that patient and the person. It's about the relationship between you and your patients. And when you do that, when you focus on what's best for them, that joy in the profession is going to come. It's a joyful profession, and you have relationships. I practiced in a small town, and my dentalist, and I stopped in 2010, so it's been 14 years. My dental assistants and hygienists were still on Facebook. They still Facebook me. They still, are excited about the book. You develop these relationships with people that are just amazing, and particularly you're able to help your patient. So doing the best for the patient, focusing on them, and then you have that joy. That's where the joy in the profession comes from. And you can live your life in joy in dentistry. And I'm excited for you. It's an amazing time, amazing profession.
I couldn't agree more. So thank you so much, Kim. This has been one of the best interviews that I've had. So thank you. I appreciate you. If you want, share again the name of the book and where they can reach out and find you if you have a website.
My website is Dr. Kimberly Harms, HARMS.com. And you can use a link to the book right on the website. But the book is called, you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble online. It's called Are You Ready? How to Build a Legacy to Die For by Dr. Kimberly Harms. And if you type that in, it'll go right to the book. And I want this available to everybody. It's actually being translated into Polish now. I'm not sure why, but it's being translated. I want it available to everyone. So I have the Kindle version for 99 cents. I mean, you got to pay for the print version because they have to print it up. But I want this to get out to people. So I have that Kindle version right now, at least for the next few months, for 99 cents, so that people can get it without any financial hardship.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. Can't wait to see where you go with this. Really, it's very exciting.
Thank you so much for listening to the Women in Dentistry podcast with Dr. MJ Hanlon. If you like our show and want to know more about us, check out our website, thewomenindentistry.com, or please leave us a review on iTunes. Join us for our next episode as we bring you another amazing woman leading the way for the next generation.